Let it all go to step into your true power on today's Oblyron Divination. Greetings everyone, I am Oblyron, Lord of the Underworld and consort to the most lovely Hecate. Thank you for joining me on today's Elemental Synastry Reading. It is a divination technique which was gifted to me by the goddess upon her sacred marriage, and it involves the tarot, the 5 elements, and astrology. Now this is a timeless collective reading, so take what resonates and discard what doesn't. And if you do happen to resonate with today's message, then feel free to leave a like, subscribe, or comment, and let us all know exactly how you resonated with today's reading. And if you're interested in the extended reading with oracle decks, I will be posting that on my Discord, so head on over to Discord if that interests you. Okay, so the first element that I start off with is the element of spirit, and I draw a tarot card to see what is influencing that particular element. So, love, what is influencing the element of spirit? Ooh, the inverted star. Okay. So it feels as though like we're at this sort of point where we have difficulty in accepting help. Now, this is probably accepting the help that our guides are trying to offer us. What I'm getting is that, and I've been going through this a lot myself this year, it's this sort of feeling that we should be somewhere where we aren't quite at yet. And when things don't always necessarily go our way, or we are, sort of thrown with a curveball, when life throws us that curveball, it's very easy to be derailed and to kind of lose faith in what our spirit guides are trying to tell us. I'm not really getting that this is an earthly issue. This definitely has to deal with guides, with spirit guides, with something in spirit. And as we go to the rest of the reading, we're going to find that all of the elements come back to the element of spirit. And yeah, with this being a very spirit-heavy reading, there are definitely a lot of things that we should do. So part of that is sort of reconnecting with our guides, reconnecting also with ourselves too. Maybe there are things in our expectations which sort of unfairly or maybe unjustly put ourselves and our guides in a position to where, we just kind of wanted to break through the lessons. We kind of wanted the Cliff Notes version of the lessons. We wanted to speed through things. We wanted to just be like, okay, give me the synopsis, give me the summary, and just let me do my thing. Well, sometimes, especially if we are creating anything of value, a lot of times, those things take time, and it's very important to allow our guides to work as they need to work. Okay, so let's roll the astrology die to get some further clarification. Now, the astrology die can either be advice or a likely outcome. And what we have is Mars in Leo in the 7th house. Okay, so let's line this up. Mars, Leo, 7th house. So I roll once for the house and I roll a second time for the decan. We got another 7. Wow, okay. So we're in the middle decan of Leo in the 7th house. All right. Now, when it comes to Libra, sometimes it means relationships, sometimes it means people that we view as equals or peers. For me, especially with this, with that inverted star there going, and also with the element of spirit, which is so heavily attached to this, this is starting to feel more like, it's not necessarily a love reading, although this could deal with a relationship. For me, this feels more like our relationship to our peers and equals in general, those who we are under contractual obligations with as well. And what I'm getting is that, yeah, we may feel a little bit lost by our guides. We may feel a little bit, not necessarily betrayed, but maybe we have been sort of, put on the back burner a little bit. And what this is suggesting is that we really need to reclaim our independence, and we really need to reclaim our, that Leo energy. The middle decan of Leo is the Lord of Victory. And for us to be victorious, it's really about reclaiming, again, like I was saying, that independence. It's really about being able to stand on our own 2 feet and being able to communicate effectively in our day-to-day situations, whether it be with our relationships or whether it be with our peers, our co-workers, whatever that is. We may feel like we've gotten a little bit lost, like maybe the boundaries and the edges have kind of blurred a little bit into what our sense of self is and what our identity is. However, especially with Mars and Leo there, those are 2 very individualistic energies, individualistic fire energies. It's telling us to essentially reignite our fire and to really, again, not feel like we are forsaken or that we have been betrayed by our guides or maybe by spirit or any of that. Not to feel that, but to really discover, or I should say rediscover, our own sovereignty. This really is a message about sovereignty. It's really a message about reclaiming our own individuality. So it's not that our guides are necessarily gone or absent. It's just we need to do the work for ourselves too. We can't just be, pulling tarot cards all day hoping that things will change. At some point, we need to put in the elbow grease. We need to put in the work. And that seems to be the message which is very clearly being communicated right now. Okay, let's move on to the next element. So that's the element of fire, and it's represented by the wand. And fire can represent our drives, ambitions, desires. So let's see, what's happening in the element of fire? Let's get some clarification on this. Okay. Yeah, that would make sense. The 5 of Cups. So we're experiencing a lot of loss, a lot of pain, a lot of disappointment. It's almost like the wind has been taken out of our sails a little bit, especially when it comes to our fire. We may feel like we don't have that drive that we used to. We may feel like we don't have that zest for life. And especially, if we're feeling sort of neglected by our spirit guides, that could be kind of like a double whammy too. But again, it's really about our sovereignty. It's really about our individuality and really coming into our own as well. So really, the whole thing to look at it from this aspect is to really look into our hearts and to say, okay, well, why am I so upset? Why do I feel like I have to be almost coddled by my spirit guides in order to feel validation? Or why do I have to, or why do I need external validation? Why do I need validation from my peers or in my relationship, in all this stuff? Why can't I just be whole and complete and sovereign on my own? So yeah, this is really This is really a message of about self-discovery, especially finding our own self-worth and being able to really press on even when nobody's looking. You know, that's a real test of who we are, is when no one's looking, when when the views don't come in, when the likes don't come in, you know, all that kind of stuff. Are we still the people that we think that we are? Are we still ourselves? You know, that's really the main thing here. And really looking into those issues will help us to rekindle our fire with ourselves, and also in the interpersonal relationships that we have with others as well. All right, let's see what the astrology die have to say to that. Okay, so we have the South Node in Sagittarius in the 9th house. Lots of Sagittarius energy there. I guess it makes sense since we are on the element of fire. Okay, and let's re-roll for the decan. All right, 5. So we are in that middle decan of Sagittarius. Okay, middle decan of Sagittarius. Yeah, so that's the Lord of great strength. That middle decan of Sagittarius. And it's interesting because it's also in the 9th house, which is ruled by Sagittarius. So we have a lot of this Sagittarian energy, which is really sort of coming down, wanting to really rekindle our fire. It's trying to tell us, it's saying, look, you know, there's a whole world out there. There are places out there. There are people out there. There are so many things to discover, so many things to learn, so many things which we can look to for guidance, which we can discover also within our own selves to help give us joy. There's just a whole big world out there, and you know, that's also what Sagittarius has to deal with. It's about, you know, that expansion through travel, through higher education, through knowledge, and yeah, that Lord of great strength, especially with it being tied to the South Node, it's saying that karmically and also in our past, you know, we were ignited by that. You know, the world did fascinate us. The things outside of us did fascinate us. We did have that zest for life. So really, what were the factors that went into us feeling so dissatisfied? What were the factors that caused us to lose that spark? Is it our own expectations? Is it our own neediness? You know, really, what is it? If we look at all of the, let's say, the practices of enlightenment, you know, we find that it's really about removing the ego from our situation. It's about removing the expectation of what we want and not being attached to the outcome, not being attached to any of that. It's being able to remain detached through all of that. And so this is really the main message of that. And also too, it could be suggesting, okay, well, since we did have all this abundance and so much in the past going for us, that could be fueling the current state of being upset with ourselves, at the current state of depression or of unease, whatever it is that's vexing us right now. So yeah, we may be feeling all these things. However, again, really, this also seems to be a message of detachment, to being able to adequately detach from the outcome so that we can, so that we're not so, I wouldn't say ungrateful is the word, but so that we're not, let's say, so disappointed if things don't quite happen the way that we want them to happen. That's all just ego talk there. That's just all our own preferences, and it's really a minuscule part of everything that we're feeling right now. So yes, we are not abandoned. We have abundance. It's just being able to really feel that again, to feel it in every cell of our body, to really embrace that and envision it as well. Okay, let's move on to the next element. It is the element of air, which is represented by the sword. And air can represent our intellectual endeavors, our communication, expressions, all those types of things. Okay, love. So what is influencing the element of air? What do we have here? Five of Swords. Yeah. So it seems like everything that we have accomplished, or everything that has sort of happened to us, the victory seems rather shallow. It seems like, it seems like even if we had to have a victory, it was a minor victory at best. It seems to be mostly a lot of defeat which is happening. We're experiencing sort of setback after setback, and no matter what we try and what we do, a lot of these setbacks just keep on happening. And at some point, you have to ask yourself, okay, well, how many times do I have to experience these setbacks when I'm starting to, or before I start to lose my faith, or before I start to say, okay, well, spirit guides, where are you? All that kind of stuff. But pretty much especially if we are being drawn to a higher path, the way is not always going to be easy. A lot of times the way is going to be very hard. It's going to be very difficult. And also a lot of times when we expect so much from ourselves, especially with the past, that South Node being in Sagittarius, with so many expectations that we place on ourselves, it could also make the victories that we do have seem almost non-existent, because we expect so much from ourselves. And really, the message here is to not be so hard on ourselves. We've tried a lot of things. We've tried to communicate what we needed. We've tried, approaching things, learning things to hopefully have a better grasp of what we're doing, or to have things from different angles. But again, those victories seem few and far between. And even when we do have the victories, it seems like they're just sort of empty and hollow in a way. But again, the whole message behind this, as we relate it back to spirit, is to go back into our individual sovereignty. Yes, things may not be what we want, or we might not be where we want to be. However, now is not the time to give up. Now is the time to just keep on pushing forward, and to really grasp who we are. Because this is the time when we really discover what we're made of, essentially. Okay, let's see what the astrology die have to say to that. So we have Uranus in Aries in the 5th house. All right. So here we have Mars in Leo, and here we have essentially Mars in Leo again, popping up. Excellent. Now we got Uranus. Let's re-roll for the decan. First decan of Aries. Okay. That's starting to clear up things a little bit. So, pretty much what's happening is we're still, from an energetic standpoint, we are still at the very beginning of this journey, whatever it may be. And even if we've been engaged in it for a year or two, or maybe even 3 or 4 years, on the timeline, on the overall timeline, we're still very much at the start. And because we're still very much at the start, those, I guess you could say, those gifts of spirit are probably going to still unfold at a slower pace than if we were further along in our journey. And that's okay, because everything will come to us in due time. Everything. And with Uranus there, also, we still have the ability to do whatever we want. Right now, nothing is really set in stone. Nothing is really cemented to the point to where we're in like a straitjacket. Things are still very much open and free. And that, combined with that first decan of Aries in Leo, means that we're still sort of redefining ourselves. We're at the beginning of our journey, and we're still redefining who we are, what gives us pleasure, what drives us, what motivates us. And yeah, that also feels why a lot of these victories are kind of shallow, and why we may feel abandoned by spirit, why we might be upset. But it's really, this is an opportunity to start over. Or I should say, we're still in the opportunity of starting over. So as long as we're still in that opportunity of starting over, the future is still wide open to us. We haven't quite chosen a direct path yet, because we're contemplating all the options. And that could also feel why we're a bit upset, or why we may feel a little bit abandoned. However, again, that's just all part of it. So as long as we keep an open mind, as long as we recognize where we're standing at energetically on our path, on our quest, then we can really appreciate those moments a little bit more. And this is all really also about being able to live in the now and to appreciate what is happening now. And to not be so bogged down by our plans and our expectations. Again, we have a lot of Mars energy from Mars, and we have a lot of Leo energy. A lot of that is really about, again, like I was saying, not only our sovereignty, but our abilities to, especially with the Leo influence, our abilities to be able to really, just bust out and be who we gotta be, to let our individuality shine. Perhaps we have not quite found out who we are as an individual yet, and that's why we may feel like we're still a little bit stuck in neutral. And so, again, message from Spirit here is to have patience, to know we're at the beginning of our journey, and to not be so hard on ourselves. All right, let's move on to the next element. It's the element of Earth, which is represented by the Pentacle. And it can represent our spiritual and material gains, the tried and true methods, the ground on which we walk upon, that which we can see. What we see is what we get. All right, everything that has to deal with the element of Earth. Okay, what is influencing the element of Earth? The Page of Swords. So here we have another type of another type of beginning, another type of new start with the Page of Swords. It's interesting because, you know, we have the swords being influenced, almost feeling like we're at this impasse or whatever, like, you know, the victories aren't popping up. But when it comes to the element of earth, we got the Page of Swords coming in, which also suggests the start of a new endeavor. So when it comes to the foundation, when it comes to the element of earth, we are also just starting out again. We're trying to figure it out again with that Page of Swords. Our brain is going. We're still trying to say, okay, should I do this with my time? Should I do that with my time? Should I tell this person how I feel? Should I tell that person how I feel? There's a lot of beginning qualities in this reading that we're looking at. So again, we shouldn't beat ourselves up too much because so many things are brand new. So many things are coming at us. And if we're still stuck holding on to the past too much, we could miss all of those wonderful things which are happening right now. And that Page of Swords is definitely reminding us to not let that go. And especially when it comes to the element of earth, you know, the element of earth is typically a more slowly moving energy, whereas, you know, air tends to be a little bit faster. So that can also go back to some of the experiences that we're feeling, and that, you know, maybe the impatience that we're feeling, and that we want things to hurry along, but we're not necessarily in a place to where things can hurry along because of that element of earth. All right. And again, with the element of earth, you know, sometimes that has to deal with our finances too. And, you know, we may be tempted to put our money into certain things or whatever with that Page of Swords energy. But at this point, especially with the rest of the reading, perhaps prudence is also a good slogan to adhere to. Not saying don't take a chance, but don't let the impatience, our own impatience, you know, drive us into risky behaviors, especially when it comes to our finances or to our, you know, possibly sacrificing our foundation. Okay, let's see what the astrology die have to say to that. So we got the North Node in Scorpio in the second house. All right. And let's re-roll for the decan. All right, third decan of Scorpio. Okay, in the second house. Wow, all right, that makes a lot of sense now. So, yeah, and we also have that North Node energy too. So, what we're looking at, that third decan of Scorpio is the Lord of Illusionary Success. What I'm getting from this is, you know, we have so many options, we have so many choices, and also that Page of Swords is also kind of steering us into creating more options, or to seeing more options than what we have. And when you have all this stuff that is coming at us, you know, sometimes too many choices can also be a bad thing, or as equally as bad as, let's say, having too few options. Too much or too little, they can both be a hindrance. So that North Node especially, it's saying, you know, right now we're in a stage where we have all this stuff swirling around us, especially with the element of air. Perhaps we could even be looking at, let's say, multiple places to live in. We could be looking at, let's say, multiple job offers, or multiple places that we're interested in applying. You know, it's just too many options. Right? We have so many things coming at us where it's very difficult to begin to really set ourselves down and to really focus and be like, okay, well, what really needs to happen here? And that's our north node right now. It's having too many options. So really, and I'm hoping maybe the element of water will clear things up a little bit. But right now, we're kind of at this point where it's like, we're in this sort of liminal space, you know, too many options. The victories that we do have, or the progress that we do seem to be making, just feels stagnant at best. And, you know, we're just kind of disappointed. We're just kind of going through the motions, and, you know, our spirit guides are not really much help right now. But really, you know, sometimes no action is the best action too. Sometimes it's good to just take a step back and to just let things unfold and then spring back into action when we do feel that the time is right. If we're trying to force something, if we're trying to force some type of movement, if we're trying to force a scenario or a situation, then that could be to our detriment. So really what we want to focus on is just, again, detaching a little bit and really sensing those major changes of when to spring back into action. At least that's what I'm getting so far. All right, so let's move on to the last element, and that is the element of water, which is represented by the cup. And water can represent our emotions, our intuition, yes, our psychic abilities, things of that nature. Okay, let's see, love. What is influencing the element of water? Okay. Ah, the Empress. All right. So, yeah, and just as I was saying earlier, you know, with water, I'm hoping water clears things up a little bit. So the Empress is really about attracting to us, attracting that which we want to us. The Empress is about, and of course also the fertility involved with new creation. So on an emotional level, on a psychic level, on an intuitive level, our gut is essentially telling us, hold steadfast and let what we want come to us. Hold steadfast and really focus on what we want to attract to us, rather than letting our mind run rampant and saying, okay, well, I want this, I want this, I want this. No. Just get rid of it all and just focus on what we feel. Really focus on, again, like I was saying with the rest of the reading, those subtle shifts. Being detached and letting your intuition, guide you to a better place. This is a time for really trusting our gut, for really acknowledging our emotions and acknowledging our intuition. We have all these options, we have all this stuff coming to us, and a lot of it is also clouded with our own disappointment and judgment of ourselves. However, again, cut through all the noise, cut through all that, and really just focus on how we're feeling. You know, if we don't get this, will the world end tomorrow? No, it's not going to end tomorrow. If this happens, will our life be over? No, none of that stuff. So it's really, again, detaching, taking a step back, saying, okay, what do I really need? What really satisfies me? What really makes me happy? And just going with that. All right, let's see what the astrology die have to say to that. So we have Pluto in Gemini in the 7th house. Okay, and let's move some of this stuff out of the way. Alright, Pluto in Gemini in the 7th house. And let's re-roll for the decan. Okay, 11. So we're in the 3rd decan of Gemini. Alright, this is interesting. Okay, let me line this up real quick. So, yeah. So that 3rd decan of Gemini is the Lord of Ruin. And as bad as the name sounds, it's actually it's a very liberating, a very liberating experience. That's that 10 of Swords energy, where, you know, all the swords are sticking in our back. We've been backstabbed, we've been betrayed, you know, we look like we might be dead, but we're really not. We're still alive and kicking underneath all of that, under all that betrayal. And of course we have Pluto coming in and basically kind of adding to that. You know, if things weren't taken away from us before, well, guess what? Now Pluto's influence is really about that dramatic change. It's really about you know, that transformation on the deepest level. So it is through losing everything that we will transform to become our highest and best selves, to where we will step into that Empress energy. And what this is also telling us too is that, you know, in order for us to attract what we want, we also need to get rid of all the noise. You know, the Lord of Ruin is really about shedding that old skin to go into the next phase of life. And again, it's amplified by that Plutonian energy there too. It's also in the 7th house of Libra. So, and you know, we're right back where we started. So this is a very strong message about really casting aside our old expectations, really casting aside everything that we thought, really just sort of almost getting rid of it on so many levels so that we can begin to attract again, so that we can clear up the channels to regain our intuition, regain our psychic abilities, and again, to be able to go back into that manifesting mode. And it's also, you know, with it dealing with that 7th house, again, it has to deal with all of our relationships, our intimate relationships, as well as our friendships and work relationships. You know, all these things which again we view on a pure level with other people. So it all has to go away. The expectations, the noise, every single one of it. And it's really about, again, going back to the theme of spirit, really about reclaiming our own sovereignty. It feels like there was a lot of boundaries that were crossed. It feels like within ourselves we didn't have the appropriate boundaries set up. And because of that, we lost ourselves in all these different situations. And, you know, we got into the habit of comparing ourselves to other people in their situation, which is one of the worst things we can ever do, because everyone's on their own life path. You know, people can post all the glorious pictures of themselves on social media, but, you know, does anyone really know what's happening behind the scenes? You know, very few people really know what's going on in that person's life, no matter how glamorous or how abundant they may make their life seem. So a lot of this has to deal with that too. Again, reestablishing our boundaries, reestablishing who we are, claiming our sovereignty, and really looking into our own individuality, not comparing so much, and again, just letting it all go. You know, we have all these options, we have all this noise coming in, you know, we feel like we're being pulled left and right, but again, let it all go, let it all fade away, so we can get back to that emotional base. We could get back to the Empress energy, which we are attracting, which we are fertile in we are fertile, we are creative, and again, Empress energy can apply to men or women. It doesn't matter. It's the energy, not necessarily the gender. So, yeah, we're in that creative energy, we're in that creative space, we're in that attractive space, we're in that luxurious space. By shedding everything, we begin to remember that. We don't compare ourselves to others, we don't do this or that. We just remember who we are. We are a sovereign being. We have the ability to create the life that we want. And again, just keep it simple. All right, let's see. Let's go over the aspects. We have a conjunction here. That's actually the furthest conjunction that we have. So spirit and water are conjuncted, which doesn't surprise me, especially with what I've just been talking about. So that conjunction means that those two energies are amplified. And the fact that it's in the same house, and the fact that they are kind of dealing and saying the same exact thing, well, guess what? That's even further amplified. So also what I'm getting here too is that, this element of water is really the linchpin to be able to move on to that next phase of life. Usually I try and look for the silver lining in all these readings, and in this reading, this water card the energy of cups is definitely that. So pair that with the message of spirit. Again, letting it all go, going through that deep period of transformation throughout all of our interpersonal relationships, reestablishing those boundaries, reestablishing our individuality. That is the main theme of this reading, especially with that conjunction. Okay, let's see what else. 3060. Nope. Nope. And okay, we also have a sextile formed with spirit and fire. So yeah, okay. This would suggest that, yeah. Okay, remember how I was saying earlier that how we probably felt a little bit let down by our spirit guides? Well, with all this Sagittarian energy and with all this disappointment right here in the element of fire, that would suggest that, yeah, that is definitely the case right there. To feel let down in spirit, to feel like, we have been forsaken or forgotten in some way. And, those two energies together can kind of amplify and create this sort of energetic vortex in which we go down this downward spiral. However, the message of the sextile here is to say, okay, just be aware of that energy, but don't let it consume you. Focus on that Empress energy. Focus on the energy of cups, on the emotions and the intuitions and the psychic abilities. Go with your gut, because that will tell you what's really happening, as opposed to having all these other things happen which make us feel like, we have been abandoned in some way or in some form. Okay, let's see. What else do we have? 50. I think we have... Let's see. No. 150 by 1. No. Okay. Well, so not as many aspects as I thought. 1 and 7. Yeah. Okay. Well. Yeah, we're not always going to get a whole bunch of aspects lined up, but that's okay. Sometimes what what does get lined up is exactly what we need to hear. And yeah, I think that's definitely what needs to be said with this. Okay, so I'm going to take this over to the extended reading. If you're interested in that, then feel free to hop on over to the Discord, and you can watch it through there. And yeah, again, if you've resonated with today's message, then feel free to leave a comment. Let us know how you resonated with it. Maybe there's something you can add to this. I also welcome, I also welcome other interpretations too in the comment section as well. This is just my interpretation. So, yeah, thanks again for watching, and may Hecate illuminate your path and guide you at the crossroads.